Hello, friends of Bitcoin, friends of price charts. It's me, E. Giuliano. It's 30th of May, reaching the end of the month, end of May. Wow, wow, wow is all I can say for now. But after that, I'm going to share the screen and I'm going to talk about price charts. Hello, friends of price charts. Hello, friends of discussions. That's what we're going to do today. Price charts, discussions, BTC. Hello, friends of price action. And hello, friends of Benjamin Cohen. Yeah, share this with Benjamin Cohen, friends of Benjamin Cohen. Definitely appreciating your work, his work. It is a much needed voice in the crypto space, price chart space, just technical analysis and content creation space in general. So good job. And that's where this inspiration comes from for now. Well, not just that. Really, the inspiration is coming just from wanting to understand the structure of this market, be able to see it, talk about it, understand it, feel it by looking at it graphically. So the points being here today, bullish, bearish, what does it even mean? WTF, does bearish mean, bullish mean, bull market mean, bear market mean? From Investopedia here, where did they get their names? Updated 21st January 21. The terms bear and bull, often used to describe, get out of there, general actions and attitudes or sentiment, either of an individual asset or market as a whole. Yeah, nothing new here. I get it. You realize this probably. You understand it maybe superficially or even deeply. Maybe it even strikes your bones. But this time here, this will come into play actually. So it's a quick way to describe market sentiment. So that's what exactly it is. And that's fine, but it's just a quick way. It's a superficial way to say something is bullish or bearish. And usually, and it comes from what they were saying is that the bullish comes from the way that they attack bullish and bearish. Bullish would attack upward with the horns, bearish would swipe downward with the claw, paw. Therefore, that is indicative of direction and sentiment, because obviously number going up is usually good sentiment. Now with short positions and other stuff like that, going down can also be good sentiment. It really depends on your action and your attitude about what is happening in the market. Now, to read the mind of the market is just some sort of God's work or something like that. But we as humans, we try and piece it together and we get confirmations after the fact, but we try and figure out price action as we're going in order to help us make decisions. And it helps us also, and the part of this is also, okay, so bullish and bearish, fine, but what does that really mean? And how does that affect our sentiment? So what if it's bullish or it's bearish? What does that mean? Well, if we understand market structure better, then we might feel differently, regardless of whether or not the market itself or the asset itself is in a quote unquote bullish, meaning uptrending, or bearish, meaning downtrending, generally, direction. So then what we're saying here is that, okay, we're going to push bullish and bearish aside here because yes, it's superficial. It means something, but what it really indicates and starts to get deeper into is trend and structure, because really bullish and bearish is signaling the type of trend it is. It's signaling bullish, meaning it's in an uptrend, bearish, meaning it's in a downtrend. That's how we colloquially say it. But it has to do with trend, and trend is direction. And it can even be sideways. Sideways can be bearish, or it could also be bullish, depending on relativity. So that's the other thing, is that we start getting, when we start even talking about structure, we start talking about relations of things. And that's where we start getting into the spectrum, the blending and cycles. Okay, wait, we're going too far ahead here. So trends, what kind of trends are there? Well, we could say there are uptrends, downtrends, and then we could say there are no trends, which is some sort of sideways movement. And all of this is fractal in nature, remembering fractal in nature, because you, this is where we're going to get into it. Whoops, that's not what we want. It's fractal in nature because within a quote unquote a bullish market, you can have a bearish movements, right? Yes, I think we understand that. And in a bearish market, you could have potentially bullish movements, you would say, yes. And all that it means is that within a larger trend, you can have smaller trends in opposite directions. In fact, the way that structure is built is through opposing waves, mono waves themselves. Okay, now, well, this is where, okay, we're not going to go there yet, because friends of Elliott wave, and particularly also friends of Neo wave, has a slight distinction there, or maybe even big distinction, not sure. And friends of counting, you know, all of that, we'll get there. But this idea of the trend, fine, it's up and it's down. And that also, it reminds me of gravity, okay? Because with gravity, really, is there really an up and a down, or is that just our relationship to the gravitational force, the overriding gravitational force, and our own structure, and, you know, as an organism? So whatever. Okay, we're not going there. That's too sideways for us. Okay. So the structure now that we're talking about from the science of price structure. Okay, people have been, you know, the Wyckoff is the big name that's being thrown out there. But basically, people have been studying price structure and market price structure, market action for decades, century. They've created candlesticks, Japanese candlesticks, in order to represent it and understand it. They use lines, other things like that. They've created tools now that we use digitally to do it, but no, using lines and all these things to understand it. But looking at price itself, highs, lows, and relationships, they start to build structures. So what kind of structures exist in these types of ways of looking at markets? Well, you've got basic two types of structures. You have an impulse structure and a correction structure. Those can be broken down. The impulse structure itself is of a certain variety. It tends to be about 5 mono waves. You know how it looks. You can do your own research on that. And its structure can vary based on extensions and subdivisions and whatnot, and other factors that make it what it is. Then with the corrective structures, there are the triangles, flats, zigzags. You know, that's where you get things like ABC, and you get things like 3s, 5s, 3s. Okay, so that's the other thing, is that an impulse itself, and that's why it's just relative, bullish and bearish, because it's really more about structure, and an impulse can go in both directions. It just depends what type of structure it's part of. Is it part of a bigger cycle of impulse, and is that to the upside or to the downside? Because what is the trend? Generally, the impulse will go towards the trend. And if it's a bigger term impulse, that means that it's a bigger term downtrend. And that kind of makes sense anyway. But corrective structures can also go both ways. So you can have price action that goes up, but is part of a corrective structure. And that's where I think, okay, that's where I'll get into that difference between Elliott wave, you know, standard Elliott wave versus, for example, or compared to the Neo wave style, which looks at, for example, in an impulse, can't retrace more than 61.8%. Otherwise, it's not part of that impulse wave, poly wave. Otherwise, oh, and another difference, a big difference too, is in a corrective mode. So in a standard Elliott wave, they might look at the lowest point as the beginning of the next cycle, so to speak. But in in a neo wave, you would see that, well, patterns put together might actually end at a higher point as part of a corrective structure in order to begin a new impulse or a new structure, even if it's a next correction. Okay, so highs and lows don't necessarily indicate beginnings or ends of let's say macro waves. Okay, or even sometimes even of poly waves themselves. All right. Okay. Now, not getting too much into that. Understanding now, though, do you see that bullish and bearish just means the emotions of what people are fearing? Okay, fine. So then we understand that within that, it can blend. And that's the yin and yang symbol is a beautiful imagery of that. Because let's say you have the white as your bearish sentiment, but within that, you can have the bullish movements. And, you know, those are the swing lows and highs, so to speak. And then, of course, and then opposite wise, you know, you have your bullish movement with some bearish movement in it, but the overall trend, the consuming trend versus the, you know, parts of the trend. All right, so that's basically that idea. All right, so when you think about like that, you realize that actually things as fractal in nature and just as the way things seem to work, they actually are just part of a spectrum. Okay, because even sideways action has the same types of structures built into it and is created through bigger pieces of action and all of that. And when, you know, things blend because one thing becomes another, but just like seasons of the year and you know, and any other type of cycle that is a repetitive cycle, whether it's the exact same or just self-similar in that sense, there's a blending that happens where they transition but are blended in that sense that they are connected, but also when we look at things, they are actually disconnected. They don't, not everything has to connect one linearly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 necessarily. And in fact, possibly they likely do, but it's just that as we read it, we don't have all of that picture. So what does it really mean? It means we can take chunks of it and see them and not necessarily have them be connected to the previous action. And that's partly because of the timeframes we look. Like here is a weekly chart and we'll look at it, but really when we go into the monthly. So one thing about NeoWave, talking about timeframes, is that previously in the book that I referenced before about Mastering Elliott Wave by Glenn Neely, he mentions from going from very small time frame to the larger time frame and building it out. But now recently in some videos and talks that he's given, he's talked actually about how the one thing that he would do differently is the opposite way. He would actually go from the macro, the biggest picture, down and confirm the bigger picture as going down. Okay, now that's just another idea. That means that all of these movements here, this is a weekly chart of BTC USD, and it starts around 2012. So you can imagine that there was 2-3 years action, 2.5, whatever it is, action back there. When in terms of trading, let's just give it, let's say another year, like 2011, 2012 to 2012 is big, you know, maybe through 2010, but 2011, 2012, 2013 to 2014, and then up to 2018, and now up to 2021, right? 2018 down to 2019, right? So what happens then is you can start grouping things together. But before that, I just want to continue with this idea, okay? This right here means a lot. This, like you hear Benjamin Cohen say, is the definition of bear market is based on a metric of measurement. Of course, all definitions are metrics of measurement. They define what it is that we are conceptualizing or, you know, actually looking at in the world, whatever, you know what I'm saying? I hope so. Anyway, yeah, anyway, by the way, thanks for liking and commenting. Share some comments, thoughts, whatever. Share the video for sure. And if you're not subscribed and you want to stick around for more, subscribe to this. So we've got these metrics of measurement. So for example, a band, a bull market support band, it's even called colloquially, let's say, is a what, 21 EMA and like a 20 SMA, or I don't know, whatever, some moving averages, right? That's the point. You can choose good metrics of measurement though. That's the point too, is that we're trying to find our good metrics of measurement, and then really what we're trying to do is understand and then act, okay, based on that. So interesting. So that means, look, we use language to transmit concepts and to understand them as well. And also as receiving, we use the language. So we use language for receiving the concepts and then building understanding. Now, in terms of building understanding, that's where I get into thinking, reflecting, and meditating. Meditating really is more so in this kind of context, is more so like meditating with concentration on the ideas, but it also has a looseness to it, a certain peace of mind and openness to it, and an allowing of the flow of the thought energy. Okay, and reflecting too, like, so the idea being that these concepts, like, how good do you know a concept? You know what one is, but how good do you know the concept of one, really? How much understanding do you have of one? You build your understanding through the thinking, reflecting, meditating aspects of thing. And thinking is, reading is thinking, let's say. Consuming information is thinking in a certain way. If it's just receiving it and then not processing it, then okay, you're missing the thinking. But receiving and then processing information is thinking, okay, very important. And reflecting on that, like further reflection, not just getting it superficially, but then further reflecting and combining different thoughts into reflections. And then really that becomes a meditation in that sense. All right, and these, I chose to use action words here because that's really what it is. It's you, me as a human, it's you as a human using the mind power to do its work. Okay, and that part of its work is to control the emotion power, or at least to recognize and understand the emotion power, and that does a lot. Okay, yeah, I don't know what else to say right now on this. I think I'm done with this talk for now. How about this? I'm going to leave it there though, and I'm going to say this. Okay, what do I see? What does this mean? Because we're trying to understand over here. We're over here. This, what does it matter, right? It's all in the past, but it does matter, and it can give us ideas and trajectories. We remember in the previous video, if you didn't watch the part 1 and part 2 videos of these trend lines, check it out. Let me know what you think. Okay, now, what am I thinking? I'm combining. What I'm going to combine is, because you get alternation. You generally get impulse and then correction. And a correction can have multiple corrections, but you're going to alternate. You're going to have impulsive behavior and corrective behavior. Even if that means you have an impulsive behavior up, a corrective behavior down, and then an impulsive behavior down, which would be different than the corrective behavior down. All right, I'll explain that in a second. That's part of like why a corrective behavior can actually finish higher than its lowest point. That would mean, like, for example, here, your impulsive behavior could be all the way up here, and then corrective behavior could be to about here. Okay, and then you could actually have impulsive behavior get back down. Does that make sense? Now in this case, instead, the impulsive behavior continues up. Then we get corrective behavior down. I'm not going to go into my theory just right yet, or not necessarily theory. It's just some observations and thoughts. Get the corrective action down, and then you could have impulse up, or you could have impulse down. Does that make sense? You could continue having correction, and that correction could also kind of go up or down as well, or somewhat sideways. That's what I'm understanding. But then that would be part of that correction we're talking about. And usually they're going to relate to each other somehow. They're going to relate to each other. And what I'm seeing here potentially is a relationship in proportion. They actually relate to each other proportionally each cycle, but I'm not saying each cycle relates to each other in a bigger grand cycle. So what I'm saying here for now is I'm going to chop up these cycles so that we can just pay attention and take a look better and see what we might be looking for. So I'm thinking actually we have this impulse here, and it goes to the top and actually coming to around probably here, maybe here, not sure, whatever. Okay, that's like that first chunk of impulse correction. Then we're going to get our next chunk of impulse correction. It's going to be about here, and it's going to go up to 2018, and it's going to come down actually to about here. Okay, that's not a rough drawing. Okay, it you know, that's all I'm going to say. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to continue this talk about it, but I'm not going to go much further into why I'm thinking and seeing that right now. potentially have a bunch of time right now to talk about these things in detail and nuance. So I'm going to join that conversation a bit, and I hope it's of value to you. So now we're making this activity here. One thing I'm wondering is, are we now moving into a period where it's just going to be proportionally different? Like it might be worth 2 of these as a huge cycle, because now we're in such a macro movement that it will make some big movements proportionally, possibly, but maybe not. Anyway, that's just some food for thought. So that's where that thinking is for now. All right, then moving into the next idea, I just want to think a little bit more locally here. So that's very global thinking, like as global as we can get, almost, at least as much as the chart data gives us. Yeah, so let's get in there. So more locally then, the question was for a lot of people, here's the high of 2017 for BTC. Yeah, again, this is a weekly chart, yeah. Using getaurox, checking the Bitstamp chart. So here, a lot of people might say here is the movement from low here up here as like a one wave and then down to the second wave. I'm not feeling that. I'm not playing that. At the most, I'm thinking maybe we've got our thing right here as a beginning of this type of macro wave, but I'm even thinking it might even start around here. Okay, and even then, if what we're in probably starts like right here. When I say that, I mean the smaller wave where the X is, not this, not this kind of bigger one right here in blue that you see. Okay, but that's besides the point. Maybe they are, so that'll depend what type of counting and what type of cycle or wave is being built. Like for example, this could be a 1-2. I've traced it out and it doesn't go more than 618. So 1-2, and then this whole thing could be a 3, and then we might have a 5. Or we could have like a 1-2, and then this could be a 3-4, and this might be your 5, and then we might be going down for a while, and that whole thing might be just a macro cycle itself, and then we might continue further for another deal. However, so then we're looking at this now in a weekly. This becomes a channel, and on a monthly, it's nice. It's just basically a mono wave right up, and this doesn't really show up. So if we're going to the macro, the monthly, it shows a slightly different picture, and we start getting an opportunity to look at it a little bit differently. But here we can say at least the confluence of this wave here and its channel, and now breaking the channel of this wave and moving across. This is about a September, October timeframe where we get at the still in the 30,000s level and reaching the channel on the low end, and on the higher end, it's even into January, if we're even, if we're playing around this higher end and going to break down a bit more, whatever. We don't even know if we're going to come back to touch this channel. It might not yet. It might be a lot higher. And that's why this might be a 1-2. This could be a 3, and then a 4-5 higher up. Anyway, that's besides the point, because honestly, the way I'm seeing it is it might even be part of a zigzag pattern, because when we start going into this monthly scenario, when you start going into a monthly scenario, you start asking, what is this even? What is showing up here? Is this thing some sort of from here up, down, and up? I mean, it can be. That's where I've been enjoying the Neely method of counting the waves. And that is one thing I'm going to attempt here, just for fun and for potential edification. I'm not going to do that now, but more to come on this. So if you want to see that happen, definitely hit up that like button and let's see what comes of it. But generally, I wouldn't start the impulse from here unless both of these together form some sort of one wave, and this thing makes it 2, but no, it doesn't even make sense. So maybe that's why I was saying it might start from around here. Let's look if we. Are they going to give me back the? No, they're not. Ugh, there, they gave it back to me. Okay, now we go to the month. See, that's what I wanted to show you. I had erased it too soon, but you see how it just channels that mono wave nicely. Okay, so we could just be getting started, just be getting started. This whole thing here could be part of the same corrective structure that relates to this impulsive structure. It looks like it to me, at least proportionally. Yeah. And if this is a 1 and a 2 here, then proportionally, the next move is going to be so massive that this little move here is going to look like one of these little suckers over here. And I guess that's what everybody's expecting. And maybe that's what's happening. Looking forward to continuing to check it out with you. I hope it makes sense so far. That's about it for now. No big deal. Not making any, none of this is financial advice anyway. I have some ideas about time. We can start looking also at time at some point, but I think that's it. I'm ending it here. I'm gonna go grab something to eat, drink some water, move around, you know, stay healthy, wealthy, and wise, my friends. All right, take care, everyone. That's it for now. I'm going to finish it off there. Thanks for listening, watching, paying attention. Maybe you're watching at 1.5x speed, 1.75x speed, maybe just normal speed. I hope it's been of value to you. You learned something, thought about something. And yeah, that's about it for now. Love, peace, and happiness. Goodbye.